Moving on to the next session, we have a keynote on Reinventing Communications Together by Samir Vayuru. Samir is currently the head of WW Business Development for Communications Service Providers at Amazon Web Services. His team works with all the leading players in the telco ecosystem in the co-pursuit of transforming the way networks and network services are built and monetized in the future. Samir is a customer-obsessed veteran of the telecommunications industry. He prides him on delivering value through innovation to the telecommunications ecosystem worldwide. Samir most recently was the co-founder and CEO of Wise.ai, a Shanghai-based AI startup delivering predictive network services for self-organizing networks. Prior accomplishments in the telco space include helping launch the first ever 40G and 100G optical transport networks, LORA, the largest IoT network as a service, and numerous other innovations starting from GPRS baseband and driving through the generational upgrades all the way to 5G. I think he has done it all and seen it all. Let's all welcome on stage Samir Vayuru.
Well, thank you. That was a long introduction. So my role basically is it's very simple. I serve the telco customers of Amazon Web Services worldwide. My job is to go sit in front of the thought leaders at the telcos, shut up and listen, and then basically go execute very quickly on the needs for our telco customers, right? And so the big privilege of my role is I get to see across 1,500 telcos worldwide what's working, what's not working, and I just wanted to share a few observations about that today. What are we not going to speak about today, right? We are not going to speak about what the cloud is. We are not going to do 5G benefits, okay? May come as a surprise, but this is probably the last time you will see 5G in my presentation. We're not going to talk about AWS-specific solutions and services. But we will have a discussion about the trends that we see in telco, how the cloud has evolved, what we've seen as the recipe for successful transformation, right? And how, most importantly, AWS and telcos can work together. I think the previous speakers said it well. There's a financial issue we have to solve, which is revenue growth and capital for investment. That's where we think we can play a role. There is cost reduction, which Danielle articulated quite succinctly. And so we'll talk about all of that today. So let's get into it. One of the biggest asks of every board member, every C-level, every VP at our telcos is help us move from a telco to a techco. So let's take numbers, right? We like to get into detail at AWS. When we deploy into an enterprise, I'd like the audience to guess how much of the total value of that enterprise workload is connectivity today. Anyone want to venture a guess? It's between 5 to 10%, right? That is the value that telcos, for all of their investment, are capturing in the industry today. Our role as AWS is to help you capture 20, 30, 40, up to 100%. 5G is happening, right? We're not going to talk too much about it. You know better than we do about it. But one of the things that you have to consider is how are you going to address these B2B companies? They are already on the cloud. Your customers are already on the cloud. They're already using hyperscaler tools, right? But the procurement process of connectivity is, I'll use the word abysmal today, right? It takes months. Our enterprise customers want to click a button and get connectivity in seconds. And we're not there yet. right? But we will get there, I promise. The rise of the network as a service, right? Why do we need to go through tenders for enterprises or governments? Why isn't the network as consumable as compute has been, as storage has been, as databases have been, as analytics have been, and so on and so on? Why aren't we billing the network in 1 cent increments to the enterprise customers? There is growing demand from private networks across the world, but that is being led by fixed wireless, as Mr. Gupta said earlier. And what we've recently observed is the sustainability issues are moving to the top of the agenda. Anecdotally, we were working with an operator in another continent, and they saw their electricity bill, their energy bill, skyrocket from 50 million to over 300 million in the space of 6 months. Okay, that's just not sustainable. What has the cloud done, right? The cloud has gotten close to the business, to the developers, and to the end users, right? If you're watching Netflix or Prime Video on your phone, the end user is using the cloud. The developers are developing on the cloud. The businesses are running their applications on the cloud. So the constant refrain from our enterprise customers to us is get me to the cloud as quickly, cheaply, and programmatically as possible. I do not want a sales guy calling on me or a sales lady calling on me telling me I should buy this 5-year contract from somebody. I want to go on a portal and I want to buy connectivity. Security first. Enough said. Faster, scalable, more predictable, right? I think that's all cloud. Vanilla to industry specific. What we mean by that is we are now going to market together with telcos with industry specific bundles, right? That's a starter kit for any industry out there. We serve hundreds of vertical industries out there. And we go to market now with telcos, and I'll show you a few use cases where we bundle the connectivity in. And again, we talked about the carbon intelligent network, and I'll show you figures of how much savings in both energy cost, carbon cost, we are able to achieve by moving to the public cloud. And then finally, the rise of the marketplace, which Daniel previewed, right? We are starting to see the truly cloud-native companies start serving through a marketplace where you go, you enter your user ID and password as the enterprise, and you start consuming SaaS as and when you need it, right? With that 1 cent increment that they're talking about. But there are challenges, right? And Daniel addressed some of these. The NEPs, the network equipment providers, modernization is very slow. Daniel mentioned one litmus test, which is the price. But if anyone comes and says, we are truly cloud native, ask them how big their container is, right? And if it's more than a few kilobytes, it's not cloud native. So just basically go take a look at that and ask that simple question. There is a transition from on-prem architectures to cloud native, and we are starting to see almost every single ISV and network equipment provider start to do this now. The TCO models. We're frequently asked to do TCO on single use case, single workload, single piece of infrastructure deployments. But that misses the point of the cloud. The point of the cloud is that it's not single use case. It is not single piece of infrastructure. It is every single use case you have running at different times or concurrently on the same piece of infrastructure. And that thinking has got to change. The other one is security, control, and privacy perceptions are not always understood. I mean, we've publicly announced that the National Security Agency of the United States is using AWS Cloud. MI5, MI6 are on AWS public cloud. They know what they're doing, we hope, right? So I think there's a little bit of fear of the unknown here about the public cloud, but we have gone through the rigmarole of really critical industries, national defense industries, national security industries, moving to the public cloud. And we've worked with many telcos to do the same, right? It's a question of understanding what the actual requirements are. So those are the challenges. So where are we investing? Our number one investment is going to market together with telcos, right? The cloud does not really exist without the connectivity that you in this room provide. All right, let's acknowledge that as a fact, right? And you should benefit from revenue growth, from better capital structure, from better profitability, from the investments that you're making. And so our mental model, everything that we do is driven by how do we drive revenue for the telcos? Because if you win, we win, right? But if you are hampered in any way, we do not grow, right? So we have to invest in that. And then we really double down on our AI ML capabilities in the telco domain, and I'll show you the results of that. And the kind of data that we're bringing to bear, which is very non-traditional, and I'll show you what that is. The BSS, OSS, enterprise IT innovation, working with, like visionaries like Danielle and even the established companies who are starting to really come on board. And then finally, this gets a lot of noise, and rightfully so. We believe fundamentally that the networks should run and run best on a public cloud, specifically AWS, right? That is a fundamental belief. We are building specific services, specific infrastructure. When we talk about the capital investment needed to build a new company, a new network, that's what we do. We invest on your behalf, right? Why? So the question I'd like the audience to take away is, why do you need to invest a single dollar in Capex, right? I know that's a bit of an extreme, but I'm stretching a point to make a point, right? Why do you need to invest a single dollar in Capex? Why not experiment on the public cloud today, see how it performs, challenge us, and let us invest? That's our whole business model, right? So that's the one thing I'd ask the audience to take away. So let's talk about the revenue growth side, right? We've publicly announced more than $3 billion worth of investment in partnering with telcos across the board. But what we require of you is to make the network available as a service, right? To accelerate that growth. Now, what do we do together? There's a lot of different things that we've done together with telcos worldwide. Let's start with the consumer, right? And what you can do today. A lot of telcos today are monetizing Amazon subscriptions. It is billed through you, the telco. It is an ARPU uplift that you can get today. I don't know whether you have realized this, but we have become the third largest advertising company in the world after the unnamed ones, Google and Meta, right? And growing really fast. And I'll tell you why that's important to the telco industry. Unified communications as a service. This has historically been an over-the-top quality of service issue that we believe we've solved with a few telcos. And we'd love to have a conversation about that. Gaming's been talked about. On the B2B side, right? Transport services. If you want to expand into a region that you do not have a POP in, you create a virtual POP on AWS. You can do it in 5 minutes. Instead of going to the national carrier in another country and negotiating terms with that business team and taking 6 months to do that. Take 6 minutes, create a virtual POP. India is the largest contact center market in the world. You should be all over that, partnering with us and addressing that with an AI-enabled as-a-service contact center. IoT, API platforms, so on and so forth. On the edge side, we are investing heavily in the edge, right? We invest for the future. We invest in it with a decade-long or higher time zone. And we're really starting to see a lot of traction in CDNs, in TV modernization, as they move from historical QAM-based transmission to over-the-top transmission. Smart home platforms, where we are vendor agnostic. Our platforms run our competitors' devices as well, right? So you're not locked into a single ecosystem. And then the edge, B2B side, private networks, rightfully, get a lot of press because it is a growth vector. But the private networks are a gateway to the business workload that the enterprise wants. It is not an end in and of itself, right? And so really think about working backwards from a specific industry. We're starting to see SD-WAN as a service, as getting rid of all of the boxes out there, all the head ends, all of the CPEs, and just making it a virtual connection. And the computer vision side is absolutely skyrocketing for us. 5G-enabled cameras, I shouldn't have said 5G, wireless-enabled cameras that you can sprinkle around any city, any venue, and they auto-provision onto your network, and you start billing immediately. These are just a few samples of what we're able to do and have been doing with telcos worldwide and would love to do here in India as well. The underappreciated part of the P&L in a telco, when you do the analysis of where the costs are, 30 to 40% of the costs are actually in customer acquisition, retention, service, right? Churn is a big cost at the end of the day, right? So how do you actually intelligently use data to better your cost of customer acquisition, increase customer retention? That is low-hanging fruit today. So we've been working with companies such as Telia, T-Mobile, and many, many others that we will announce in the coming months to fundamentally transform that connected customer journey. But that requires data, right? You have incredible data on your consumers, right? We've got to figure out how to use it. But one way, and that's the reason I alluded to ads earlier, is that the data that we are able to bring to this ecosystem is sourced from this, right? From a website called Amazon.com, right? From Prime Video, Audible, Kindle, all of the consumer-facing devices we have, right? And so when this is merged with telco data, that is an incredibly powerful story for customer acquisition and retention. Remember, when I go to a website and they want me to register, I may choose to give my real email and my real address, or I may choose not to. But when I am buying something on our retail store, I am always going to give the right address. I am going to give my real phone number. Otherwise, my whatever I buy is not going to show up on, right? And I'm not going to get it. So I'm going to give you the US specs because it's all I could do for right now under privacy protections. We've actually created a mobility audience in the United States, right? Of people who spend stuff in the wireless category and so on. How many wireless product searches have we done? And these are all indications of switching. So let's talk about remaking the data. Operations. BSS and OSS, we believe fundamentally belong in the cloud. And that's all I'll say about that in the interest of time. And then finally, the networks. This is a topic that could last hours. So what I'm going to say is we're in trials today with tens of carriers worldwide on building cloud-native networks. We've announced Dish last year. It took us 15 months from the announcement to build a full network. Zero Capex. Spark New Zealand announced last week with us. Telenor announced a network as a service with us. And you will see more announcements come at MWC and TM Forum as we go. And finally, don't neglect the energy opportunity. It is a huge issue for the industry today, and it's only going to get bigger, right? So what we've been able to do is with a tier 1 customer in Europe, with that chipset that Daniel referred to, we reduced the energy cost 55% from what they were doing today, right? And more importantly, if you look at how quickly you can basically instantiate infrastructure, on day 0, we did a cloud infrastructure deployment in 20 minutes. Get a core up and running, right? That core averaged around 15 minutes to deploy. When that core life cycled, it took us 5 minutes to life cycle it across all of the network, right? That's where the cost savings come in. And so with that, the takeaway is we fundamentally rely on you for the best-in-class connectivity, for the quality of service. Our intent is to bring the edge computing, the AWS tools and services, and the applications that run on top from hundreds of thousands of applications that run on AWS to help you grow top-line revenue, right? And so with that, really privileged to be in this audience, and really thank you so much for inviting us to present here. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Samir.